Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses with Kevin Williams, of Survival Schools Rider Training. It's show number 267. It's Sunday, 28th of August, so it's bank holiday weekend in the last summer month. It's a lovely sunny day here again at the moment here in London. So welcome to you as you look in. I'm an hour early today because I'm out in a minute. Going to go and enjoy the sunshine, hopefully. Clive's looked in. Good morning to you, Clive. Fairly short show today because I do need to get out, but I think I've got some interesting content for you. So we have a collision, a head-on collision between what was described as a parked police motorcycle and a motorbike. Start again. Police car and a motorcycle. Bonneville, the salt flats are underwater, so the speed trials out there have been cancelled. The Ulster Grand Prix, which should have been run this month, should have been the centenary event, is set to be back next year, according to the hopeful organisers. Steve McQueen's Husqvarna, which I mentioned a week ago, actually sold for $186,000. Not bad for a 1971 motorcycle. A viral video of German bikers supporting a boy with cancer, which has done the rounds on TikTok and things like that, apparently features video footage from a ride out in Brazil. And I'll look at some hilarious clickbait from the Daily Express. I've been kind of saving this one up because it's been amusing me all summer, some of their absolutely bonkers comments about driving. They are about cars, but I think you'll get a laugh out of it. And then finally, today's discussion point, a fairly important one. Does training actually get women onto bikes? I'll be looking at some statistics from the DVSA and just talking about how motorcycle training has developed and how I think it's actually supported women riders. So don't forget, if you have any comments, any questions, do drop me a line. More than happy to answer those as best I can. I will be off out at the end of the show today, so it may be a while before I get to comments that come in later. So if you are catching up, don't expect an immediate answer. And Sue's looked in, so good morning to you, Sue. All right, so hopefully we'll get on with the show. So where's my notes? There they are. Right, okay, so first thing to say, don't forget the September riding systems, what they are, why we need to apply them. Talk, that's Wednesday the 7th at 8 p.m. Tickets are a £5. Link to the tickets is actually in the header to the show, so do look over there and do sign up if you're interested in finding out my theories about riding systems and why we need them, but why we shouldn't be slavish about applying them. Now, okay, first story of the day, a head-on collision. This is an interesting one, so let's just pop that picture up. It's said to be a low-speed head-on collision between a motorcycle rider and an unmarked parked police car has ruled that the Wiltshire police were not at fault. So that's the photograph. Now, the crash between the two vehicles happened at 3 p.m. last Sunday, which was August 21st. And it seems that the police vehicle went to an area of Swindon to follow up reports of antisocial behaviour, specifically involving motorbikes. So the police said that the unmarked car, which is a BMW X5, illuminated its blue lights to request an oncoming motorcyclist to stop, but the rider, an 18-year-old man, failed to do so, hitting the front of the police vehicle. And the police report continues, as a result, he sustained some very minor injuries, which were treated by an ambulance which was called to the scene. Now, the accident was investigated by the roads policing unit from the force and reviewed by a roads policing inspector who found, quote, no fault found of the police driver. The statement therefore concluded that there will be no referral to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. And the statement for the Wiltshire Police said, the police vehicle was parked up when the blue lights were illuminated to request an approaching motorcyclist to stop. However, the motorcyclist struck the front of the police vehicle, causing minor damage to the car and the motorcycle. So have a look at the scene there. I'm not entirely convinced that the police statement that the BMW was stopped at the roadside is entirely forthcoming about the circumstances. Now, you can see from the photograph that it's actually stopped on the wrong side of the centre line. It's facing oncoming traffic. There is a double yellow line there, and although police vehicles can obviously stop on lines like that where the ordinary public can't, the car does appear to be angled to across the lane somewhat. If you look at the front wheels, they appear to be pulling out back towards the centre line. So I think there's some questions really that should be asked here. Why is the vehicle on the wrong side of the road facing an oncoming rider? Um, you know, was it actually a blocking move in the first place? The car may have been stationary when the rider hit it, but was it really parked? Had it only just stopped and suddenly appeared in front of the rider there? I don't know the answers to that. I suspect that there is a difference, obviously, between stationary and parked. Parked implies it had been there for some time, and whilst motorcyclists do run into parked vehicles, it does seem rather unlikely to ride head-on into one, even at low speed. So what happened? I don't know. Maybe the sudden, sort of unexpected appearance of the blue lights as the vehicle pulled onto the wrong side of the road and pulled up. It might have surprised an experienced rider. Obviously, an 18-year-old, perhaps on L plates there, might not have responded in quite the way that the police driver was expecting. I'd certainly like to see some video of the incident. I'm sure they have some. It would be interesting to see what it actually shows and not just try to work out what happened from the still photo. So I think that one may have some mileage left in it if the rider decides to contest that story. Be interesting to know. I doubt we'll ever find out though. Anyway, switch sides of the Atlantic, and if you head over the Rockies, you'll find the US state of Utah, which the capital, of course, is Salt Lake City, which gives you a bit of a clue about what the landscape out there is like. And the Bonneville salt flats are actually described as one of Earth's most unique landforms. Now, it's a 30,000 acre expanse of salt crust, which basically is normally dry and hard. And it actually covers an area of 12 miles long by 5 miles wide. And it's actually a remnant of the ancient Lake Bonneville, which actually covered 1/3 of Utah from around 32,000 to 10,000 years ago. And of course, at this time of the year, because the salt is flat and dry, it's the home of the famous Bonneville Speed Week and the Bonneville Motorcycle Speed Trials 2022. The first event should have happened a couple of weekends ago. The speed trials for motorcycles should have been this weekend, but unfortunately this year, no go, because apparently 2 weekends ago, when Speed Week was cancelled due to heavy rain, there was standing water on the lake bed. Apparently 23 square miles, 57 square kilometers were flooded, and calculations, I don't know who sits down and does this kind of thing, but they say it amounts to 327,000 cubic meters of water. So that's not drying out anytime soon. Reports last week said that the water was standing anything from 4 inches to 10 inches deep across the area. That's roughly 250 millimeters if you're a metric person. And there's no possibility that the water was due to recede by this weekend. So the announcement was made last week to cancel the event. And it's kind of a mad reversal, really, of our respective climates, isn't it? The south of the UK is still in drought conditions. We have had some rain, but we have a hosepipe ban. I was out in Kent doing some training yesterday, and I came over the hill where you can look down on Buell Bridge Reservoir, and frankly, it looked like a dried up puddle in the middle of it. I've never seen the water at Buell Bridge so low. So we're in a drought. Normally it rains here, of course, and one of the driest places on earth is flooded. Apparently Death Valley has also had more than its usual share of rain this year. So Don't forget, if you want to catch up with this show, it normally goes out at 11. Today it's going out an hour early because I'm out to take advantage of the bank holiday weekend. Next weekend's show, or next Wednesday's show and next Sunday's show, still a little bit doubt about those because I'm making an unexpected trip to Scotland. I'll try and put something together for everybody who likes to tune in and find out what there is going on in the world of motorcycling. But if I can't do a couple of shows, it may be a while. I might miss 2 shows before I'm back online. So that would be Wednesday in September, wouldn't it? Would it be the... not quite sure what the date would be, actually. I haven't got the diary right in front of me at the moment. Let's just flick across to the other screen. It would actually be Wednesday the 7th, wouldn't it, I think? So we'll see. I'll try and do what I can, but as I say, I will be in Scotland for a late summer, slightly unexpected holiday. Let's hope the drought actually gets up to Scotland, because it's been raining on the west coast quite a lot apparently this year. About the only place in the UK it has. Right, so on with the show. So I'd mentioned Steve McQueen's Husqvarna 400 Cross, 1971 bike. It went under the hammer at an auction in California this week. And just in case you're wondering how much it made $186,500, which is roughly £158,000. And that was rather more than they were expecting. If I remember right, the guide price was $135,000, so went significantly over the expected price. Interestingly, the bike was actually sold with full provenance. It had proof of purchase from the late actor's estate, and all the sales documents from the various auctions previous owners had it were there, so full provenance. It was also said to be unused, even unstarted, since the time it was last ridden by Steve McQueen. So complete with sort of the scrapes and dents that you'd expect in an off-road motorcycle. And it even had a spare spark plug still taped to the frame. So quite a valuable motorcycle there. Now, whilst the Husky is a bit of a classic of late 1960s design, half a century later, designers are still trying to make minimalist looking machines, but for the custom scene. And personally, I think most of them actually looked pretty damn terrible. They're neither a proper retro, nor are they a sort of, I think, a forward-looking machine. And whilst they sort of strip off what they would describe as unnecessary, I also think they often laden these things with unnecessary tech. You know, these resto mods that you see with upside down forks and sort of bodged on monoshock rear ends and things. I really do think a lot of those are truly ghastly. But I'm just trying to find the photograph, which has appeared to have disappeared from my collection of photos. Let me just try and get this up. Slightly confused morning. I'm in a bit of a trying to get everything going a bit earlier than normal this morning, so I just managed to make a bit of a muddle of what I had ready to go up on screen. There's that one. Let's see if I can just get this picture up. Yes, okay, so here any moment now. There it is. That should pop up now on screen. There it is. Okay, so there is the Nui. It's designed to look, according to the Belgian builder of the bike, like a cafe racer. Personally, I'd say this thing looks nothing like a cafe racer of the 1960s. Certainly not the sort of thing that you would have seen going up and down the North Circular Road to the Ace Cafe and back. It's actually the work of a Belgian designer named Benjamin Saurin, and it's based, interestingly enough, as you can probably work out, not on a petrol engine bike, but Socco's TC Max. Now, the Super Socco bike is actually quite a sharp-looking little machine. It's fairly tiny, actually. Offers sort of 125 equivalent 60 mile per hour performance from its 5 kilowatt electric motor. It's learner legal, and aside from that rather silly sort of 1.5 person seat. How are you going to get a passenger on that? I have absolutely no idea. Ridiculous. It's actually, I think, quite a nice looking little bike. How they the designer turned that into that, I have absolutely no idea. Frankly, you should take that and bury it somewhere, in my opinion. I'm always interested, of course, on your opinions. Do you like that or not? It's an unusual one. We got Sue looking in, who says she agrees with the positioning of the police vehicle. Clive asks where I'm going in Scotland. Out on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula is the answer to that one. Basically, go to Fort William, turn left, and stop 50 miles later in the middle of nowhere. It's a lovely place. I'm not sure what we're going to do. Probably play noughts and crosses or something if the weather's wet. And probably eat far too much food. And Keith looked in as well. Good morning, Keith. Lovely to see you. Right. Okay. So where were we? We were looking at that Super Socko. Now, one place you won't find that Super Socko circulating is at the Ulster Grand Prix. Firstly, because clearly it's far too slow for a race event, which is the fastest race in the world, apparently. But also because the Ulster Grand Prix was cancelled once again this year. It should have been run earlier this month. It was cancelled 2020 due to COVID. The 2021 event was COVID affected too, but the organisers also went bust. But the interesting thing was that the 2022 event was actually called off back in March. It was under new ownership, but they claimed the funding that had been promised wasn't forthcoming. Now, I did actually report on this back earlier in the spring, and I got the impression a little bit from all the reports and the statements that were made by those organisers that they were attempting to hold Tourism Northern Ireland, who provide the cash for events like this, over a barrel. The race organisers, they are Revival Racing Motorcycle Club. They are led by the organizer of the Northwest 200, a chap called Mervyn White, who obviously has, provenance and a history of putting events together, and former TT winner Phil McCallan. And they said that the reason that the 2022 event, this year's event that should have been earlier this month, that fell through because they said an agreed funding sum of £800,000 fell through. Now, the race had the backing of the Northern Ireland Department of Finance and the Northern Ireland Department for the Economy, but they weren't stumping up the cash. The money would have come from Tourism Northern Ireland, and they effectively explained that they simply didn't have enough cash in the bank to support the Ulster Grand Prix as well as the Northwest 200 event, which they also put cash into. And it's from a pot basically that has to support every tourist event in Northern Ireland, not just motorcycle racing. And at the time, back in March, Tourism Northern Ireland actually stated that they only had 1.2 million in total to play with. So asking for £800,000 for one bike race, really, I think was pretty much a non-starter. However, talks apparently now have restarted, and the former racer, Phil McCallan, he says he's optimistic that the Ulster will return to the 2023 calendar. And what he says is, we are talking to Tourism Northern Ireland about our plans for next year, and Tourism Northern Ireland do want to see the event succeed again. We've already had 2 meetings with TNI, and we're due to meet again within the next few weeks. And then he goes on to say, it's time for everyone to wake up and smell the coffee. The world has changed, and the only way that motorcycle racing is going to receive proper backing is by making it a professional presentation to the relevant government departments. Now, talk is actually of a 10-day festival, so something really to rival, possibly even exceed the Isle of Man. And whilst this will undoubtedly bring in a significant amount of cash if visitors turn up, and I expect that they would do, the costs will not be insignificant. And the question is, of course, where is that money going to come from? McCallan says he thinks things are looking very good at the moment. All I can say to that is we'll see. We've heard a lot from the world of politics in the last few weeks about shaking the magic money tree, and I can't help but wonder if the organisers think they can shake the Tourism Northern Ireland tree harder than everyone else competing for the limited pot of cash. Right, okay. Don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, you can pop over to my coffee page and support me over there. £3 cuppa helps me out, helps me come back to keep producing the show, gives me some funding to actually spend the time online to do this kind of thing. But also, of course, it gives you access to 800 plus better biking articles over there at the moment on that website. So plenty to read for a very small amount of money. Now, while I am trying to give you information here online on my YouTube videos, I always try to make things objective and I'm trying to make them accurate. Now, unfortunately, the same really can't be said for all the outlets which are competing for your attention. For example, a viral video currently doing the rounds on social media covers a bike rally which was organized in Germany to support a 6-year-old boy who was diagnosed with cancer. Now, the video shows footage with thousands of motorcyclists riding along a highway, and at the end of the video, a young boy in a wheelchair can be seen cheering on bikers as they go past his location. And the caption reads, "In Germany, a 6-year-old boy who loved motorcycles was diagnosed with cancer. His family posted online asking if someone can ride past their house to cheer him up. They expected 20 to 30 people, but in the end, nearly 20,000 bikers turned up." Now, somebody did do some fact checking on this. I didn't have to do this myself. Somebody else did it. And it turns out that the local press and the police did report that around 15,000 motorcyclists rode past the house of 6-year-old Killian, who is, as I say, a cancer patient, and he lives in Raldefein in East Frisia in Germany. The rally happened actually last July, so it's not immediate. And it does seem that footage from the second half of the post is genuine. But the first half, it's lifted from a protest procession being led by COVID skeptic and Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who led out a huge rally of motorcyclists in Sao Paulo the previous month. So, in fact, in June 2021. And, you know, it's frustrating. People are increasingly lifting unrelated footage of events. It's particularly bad with historical videos. There's all sorts of unrelated bits of video being plastered in to make a story where they really haven't got anything other than words, just to try to give some visual moving images. And I guess people slip it into videos like this, hoping no one will actually notice. So I do try to be a little bit more accurate than that. Now, which brings me neatly on to the next topic I wanted to look at. I've been collecting some hilarious tips from the Daily Express. Now, these are for drivers, but basically I can't get enough of this nonsense that the Express continues to publish. We all know they're clickbait. They're designed to help sell advertising on the online site, but there have been some absolute gems this summer. Now, the one that I started here with was a warning to wear the right clothing whilst driving or face a little known £5,000 fine. And then it explains basically that long dresses or baggy jeans or the inappropriate footwear can possibly get caught in the pedals. And I thought, yeah, okay, maybe, but they published that in the middle of the heat wave, and I suspect if anybody is driving around in the middle of the heat wave, they're probably shedding clothes rather than adding them. Another one revealed that a car actually comes with an obscure fuel-saving button, which saves you money when the weather's hot. Now, that cracker of a tip was apparently revealed first on TikTok, where it went viral, but the Express couldn't help but pick it up and post it in detail on their website. And it turns out, when you read it, that this money-saving button, this fuel-saving button, is actually the recycle air button. Basically, the idea is that rather than keep trying to cool air from outside the car, you cool the air in the car and then you recycle the air that's already cool. So you basically take the load off the air conditioning unit, and so your fuel bill improves slightly. Now, in my car, actually, when you press the aircon button, the recycle air comes on automatically. And my all-time favourite though was this one. It was the juxtaposition of two stories. These were both actually on their website, and they were next to each other. Now, the first one again told drivers that there was yet another little-known fine, and this one said you'll get fined if you don't use the air conditioning in hot weather. And I thought that's an interesting one. I've never come across that in the highway code. And then you read the story, and there's a long, contrived explanation that basically says you need to be alert at the wheel at all times. And it basically said that if you get overheated, you may not be alert, hence the requirement to use the aircon. But the second one was right next to it, and it says there's one button to avoid while driving your car as it increases fuel consumption by 20%. You've probably guessed exactly what that button is. Of course, it's the same air conditioning button. So absolute nonsense there from the Daily Express, but it is worth a chuckle. And I hope that made you laugh as much as it made me laugh, but also I do hope it helps you realise I do try to get some serious content on these shows. And I'm just going to finish off actually by talking a little bit about bike tests again. I did mention that some stats had come out about the early season bike tests, and that there were more bike tests between January and July this year than there were ever before. It was a record. But the interesting thing that the stats also showed was a split between genders. Now, as you might not be too surprised to discover, there are more tests taken by men than there are by women. And also interestingly is the pass rate. Men passed 44,929 tests, which is a 72% pass rate, and there were 5,133 tests taken by women with a 71% pass rate. So basically, I would say that that is as close as damn it identical pass rate, which is quite good, because one of the things that we tend to hear is that women, struggle to learn to ride motorcycles, and it basically doesn't really show that. If there is an area where women struggle, it's in the Module 1 test, and this is probably a physical strength issue more than competence, because if you think about it, the Module 2 part of the bike test, the one where the pass rates were almost identical, is mostly about judgment and understanding what puts you at risk on the road and trying to stay out of trouble whilst obeying the road rules. But the Module 1 test is a sort of contrived, as you probably know, round the cones exercise. And here, ladies do struggle somewhat. 76% of men passed. It was only 57% of women. Now, it'd be interesting to know more about what they failed on. I don't actually have that information. I suspect that one of the trickier maneuvers is the high-speed curve into the emergency stop, which has to be done. I tried that years ago when I was sort of just about finishing my time as an instructor, and they were just starting to think about bringing these maneuvers in, and I did actually try it, and it wasn't easy. I mean, it wasn't something that is impossible, as was being talked about when the Mod 1 test came in. Some people were saying it was undoable, but it did take a little bit of focus and concentration, and it may be that there are problems with that Mod 1 test for women, and that may not be unconnected with the change in the A2 not the light motorcycle license, the intermediate motorcycle license, the up to 47 horsepower one, where the test motorcycle that has been reduced in CC, so you can use lighter bikes to take that test, and they're obviously probably a little bit more compact too, and as obviously women tend to be shorter than men, that's a bonus. But what they were saying, BMF chair Jim Freeman, he said, great news, the increase in female riders particularly may not sound much, but compared to a couple of decades ago, that looks like real progress. Anything which breaks down barriers is a good thing. Well, yeah, okay. I got involved in motorcycle training in 1995 when everybody took their test on the 125 and then got a license to ride anything. A year and a bit later, in the spring of 1997, the direct access was introduced, and that, if you recall, if you took your test on a 125, you got a 33 horsepower restricted license. If you took your test on a direct access bike, which at that time was one producing more than 47 horsepower, so typically we used things like GS 500s, CB 500s, and ER5s. You got an unrestricted license. Now, obviously, we've now got the 3-tier system. But what I remember from that change between 1995, 96, and then the introduction of direct access, the number of women coming into biking actually went up very significantly. At one point, it was probably getting on for 1 in 5 of our candidates was female. So I'm not entirely convinced by that statement that we're actually increasing the number of women coming into motorcycling. I wonder if, in fact, it's actually dropped back a little bit since those days. When I was first training on those 125s, I'd say that the ratio of women to men was probably 1 in 10, and actually we're not back to 1 in 10, but we're certainly it's probably about 1 in 8 or something. So I'm not sure that women are still definitely in the minority, men in the majority, but whether that deficit is actually decreasing or increasing again, I really don't know. Now, interestingly, a bit of history here. The Women's Institute was actually the organization that was behind the 250cc limit on learners that came in all the way back in 1962. So ancient history now, but it does tell you who thought motorcyclists were, at risk and who shouldn't be riding them. The go forward to 1986, and Mark Willis, the journalist, he wrote in a edition of Bike Magazine, and he said, "No one can get in a car and drive it about unrestricted on a provisional license." Quite right too. By law, the learner must be accompanied by a qualified driver at all times, and in practice, most learners on 4 wheels only ever drive whilst undergoing formal instruction prior to taking their test. Why should the situation appertaining to us be any different? So basically, what he was saying there, and it was heresy at the time, absolute heresy. Personal liberty, freedom of choice were the words on everybody's lips. He predicted the compulsory basic training, which came in the early 90s, and basically meant that everybody on a learner license at least had to do a bit of training before they were allowed loose on the road. And he also basically predicted the introduction of licensed instructors that came in to teach direct access. And he said the crunch comes in how you regard the long-term effects of such a system. Should it be imposed in Britain? Now, at first glance, it would appear draconian and repressive, even compared with the complicated mess we've got now, which was the old Part 1, Part 2 test. It would define a simple and straightforward schedule for anybody who decided they wanted to get on a motorbike. See bike, get trained, pass test, buy bike. And yeah, he was right. The 3-tier test with the module 1, module 2, 2-part practical test has complicated matters somewhat. But I think Willis was absolutely right in one thing. It really opened up motorcycling to women. Women like, I think, and you can correct me if I am wrong, I think women like structure to training. Men are more prepared to wing it. They're happier with it if it's a bit ad hoc, I think, which is why there was so much protest within biking groups. But I think women actually found the ability to get onto a training course and come out at the other end with a test pass attractive. And I think that has had significant effects on keeping women coming into biking. Yes, they may not be 1-to-1, but there are still a significant number of riders out there, and many of them are very, very good indeed. Frankly, if you ask me who's easier to train, it's generally the ladies. So, all right, that was it for today. I hope that little sort of slightly rambling dissertation on women in biking and a little bit about the history was interesting to you. That is pretty much it for today. I'm going to wrap up fairly short order now. Don't forget that talk on Wednesday, the 7th of September. Do come along if you possibly can. That's all about riding systems, what they're for, how to use them, and why we should avoid being slavish about the riding system, but understand what we're using it to do. After that, as I say, the next two shows will be up in the air. I'll keep you posted on what's going to happen. I will try and get something out to you, even if I can't do it live. Sue says, cheers, very interesting about the men and women learning. And Clive says, have a great holiday in God's country. Thank you, Clive. Thank you, Sue. Right, that's it from me today. If you are out there on your bike later, I think you've got a nice day's riding, but make sure you stay shiny side up.